Hi, my name is Lieutenant Commander Erin Simmons. I'm a clinical psychologist. I work at Naval Hospital Camp Lejeune in Jacksonville, North Carolina. I've also been stationed in Okinawa, Japan, Camp Fallujah, Iraq, and Camp Ramadi, Iraq during OIF in 2004-2005 for Fallujah and 2008 for Ramadi. In the course of my work, I have come up with rules of thumb that I believe greatly help us all, including myself, have a successful return and reunion from deployment. So I'd like to share those rules with you. Rule number 1 is beware the fairy tale. When we come back, we always like to think that everything is going to be perfect. Our spouse is going to do and say everything we want. We're going to have that perfect romantic evening, or maybe just relaxing evening. The house is going to be fixed, the children are going to behave, the finances are going to be in order, and the extended family is not going to be calling off the hook. But as we know, the fairy tale almost never happens. So we need to be ready for that and beware when our expectations start getting the best of us. Rule number 2 is to beware of unrealistic expectations and to be patient. Sometimes when we are expecting the fairy tale or just expecting life to go a certain way when we get back or when our loved one gets back from a deployment, we start assuming that that's the way things are going to go. And then when they go differently, even if it's not bad, we feel disappointed, we feel resentful. Sometimes it starts lots of fights that we really didn't need to have. So what I recommend is to plan your homecoming as much as you can so everybody has those realistic expectations. If your significant other doesn't say that perfect thing you wanted them to say when you get off the bus because you didn't tell them to say it, you can't really blame them. Now, if they didn't say it and you did tell them, that's a different story. But try and plan ahead for the way you want things to go. Do you want your wife and kids waiting for you at the bus? Do you want everybody you know on base or in that area waiting for you when you step off the plane? Do you want a big family party that first weekend? Or do you want a couple weeks of relative quiet when you get back just to figure out your bearings? Plan that in advance with your family and friends and significant others so they know. By the same token, the people waiting for you at home will have their own expectations. Don't be afraid to ask them what they are, and I hope that spouse or family member at home isn't afraid to tell you what they'd like to have happen, that perfect thing for you to say or do when you get home, so that those expectations are fulfilled. It will take some time for everyone to get to know each other again, and for whatever expectations you have to be made conscious and to come to pass. So everyone needs to be patient. Everyone. Rule number 3 is avoid the pissing contest. You all know what I mean by pissing contest. These are the conversations that go something like, well, I had it worse because I was out there in the desert and people were shooting at me. Well, I had it worse because I was home raising your 3 children and taking care of the house. Well, no, I had it worse because I was working every day, 7 days a week with no break. Well, so was I because I was home taking care of the kids and raising your family and taking care of the house. And it goes on and on and on. And no one ever wins those contests. So one of you has got to be the person to say, wow, you did have it pretty bad. It only takes one person to stop that kind of argument, but if you don't do it, it will go on and on and on, and no one wins. Rule number 4 is timing. Be careful of it. One of the most important rules of communication is to say things when the other person is listening, when they're in a frame of mind to listen. When a sailor, soldier, airman, or Marine gets back from a deployment after being gone for 7, 9, 12 months, after a week-long trip in multiple airports without a shower, feeling exhausted, that's not the time to tell them that the roof needs fixing and the car needs to be taken to the shop and the kids need more discipline. They are not listening. And if you push it, they may get mad, and rightfully so. They're not really on that wavelength with you at that point. By the same token, the family members waiting at home for their loved ones to come back, looking forward to nothing else but seeing their face and hearing their voice in person at that point, is not going to want to hear about complaints about them and problems that the service member has with them, and maybe even plans for the future at that point. It's very much in the present. So think about the timing that you bring things up in when you come home. It's very important to say things when you know that other person is listening and can hear you. Rule number 5 is avoid the stupid questions. Number 1, every combat veteran's most hated question is, how many people did you kill? Or did you kill anyone? It brings back bad memories. It makes them think of things they may not want to think about. And it makes them think of things they don't want to talk about, even if you ask them directly. They may feel you're trying to start gossip or asking out of a perverse curiosity, and they may feel that you just don't need to know, don't want to know, or you may look at them differently if they tell you. So they may eventually answer that question, but if you ask it first in your first conversation back, it is not going to go over well. Other questions are things like, how was it? Well, that's too general. You might get an answer like, fine. You need to ask more specific things like, how was your trip back? How did you feel during the deployment? Did you do what you wanted to accomplish? How did you feel about the trip over there? How did your job go? More specific things that's going to encourage them to talk about it. And the service member should know that he can tell you, I don't want to talk about it right now. He needs to have that much control over the conversation, and neither one of you need to be hurt or resentful at that response. This is part of being patient, letting the adjustments settle in, and figure out what each person is comfortable talking about. Other questions are things like, was it hot in Iraq in the summer? Did you see any camels? Well, the answer is most likely to be yes, but is that really what you want to know? Is that really relevant to this deployment experience? Rule number 6 is to remember to thank each other. Each person involved in a combat deployment has it rough, has a very hard job, whether you're the one going or you're the one staying behind and worrying. Remember that somebody has got to keep the house standing while the other person is fighting for our freedom to have it. Each of those people deserve and will appreciate our thanks. So remember that people on both sides of the ocean, both sides of the conflict, should be appreciated and thanked for what they've done during this difficult time.